Hi, it's Tim Clark, End Times Matrix News with Chris of End Times Matrix, and we have Anthony Patch with us today. This is our part two video, our second 1 hour segment. This is the part that we teased. This is the part dealing with CERN and issues related to DNA that nobody has been covering on the internet related to CERN. So this is some interesting stuff that will blow the minds of many people as we go down the rabbit hole of reality and try to see where these New World Order types are trying to go to. And so this show, I will read our write-up for it. The title for this show is One World RFID Biometric IDs, New Supercomputer CERN, DNA, Part 2. And so we will discuss the new supercomputer and how it will affect the world. There are already mandatory biometric IDs to cross certain borders. All of these things the world leaders have been doing is because of the biblical signs and things that are to come. Our goal is to understand the end times and to wake up more every day and to help others be aware of the truth. Why we need Jesus and how he is the gateway, not the computer. That's a good point. Their goal is to resurrect the Antichrist, Osiris, Apollo, Cain, Samael, Hermes, Thoth from the abyss. They want a new golden age. This is the time where Saturn, aka Satan, ruled the golden age of Aquarius. If you understand CERN and the instruments that are as the ancients, you will know that CERN, that represents Saturn and 666, has a goal underway that connects to the internet and mark of the beast. We have biblical signs in the four blood moons, the black sackcloth sun, March 20th, judgment on the Gentiles, CERN starting up March 23rd, new moon, September 24th, the end of the Shemitah, and the 49th weeks of Daniel, 49th week of Daniel, 49 weeks, 49 weeks of Daniel. September, CERN will start a more powerful collider. In their own words, they are trying to open a portal. The abyss, see the pics on the video with CERN and the Sanskrit. And of course, we got that pesky little Pope is going to show up on our doorstep right around then also to talk to Congress, and we're waiting on the Bibi Netanyahu, the March 3rd discussion. So that is that. And welcome, Anthony. How are you doing today?
Very good. Thank you. Great to be with both of you.
And Chris, how are you?
Doing good, doing really good. I'm glad to be back again and talking about this interesting subject together.
Okay, so why is this topic, why hasn't this topic been covered on the internet? And why are we so privileged to be the ones that break this information on the internet? Well, that's because we have Anthony Patch, and he has some real interesting connections with CERN and DNA. So Anthony will open the floor for you, and then Chris will jump in when she wants to start showing her slides related to this topic.
All right. Well, thank you. As you both know, I like to cut to the chase, and then we'll backfill. We'll kind of build the story as we go. It's readily apparent to me that DNA is a central component of the agenda with CERN. Much of the distraction with CERN to the public has been to the portal, has to the Big Bang, the God particle. But I think what we really need to talk about today is the fact that they want to use artificial DNA to create an image of the beast from Scripture. And I'll rely upon the two of you to bring the relevant Scripture and information to the discussion beyond just the science that I want to present. But I think people need to understand that CERN has a multifaceted program with the Large Hadron Collider. CERN is the location in Switzerland. The machine is the Large Hadron Collider. The machine has multiple purposes. And the purpose that I want to go over today is really the creation of a new being using DNA. It is a patterning of ancient DNA using modern technology in the construction of artificial DNA by creating the proteins and the amino acids that are necessary to create what we're familiar with as the double helix pattern. They are going to build a triple helix pattern of artificial DNA to create an artificial being. It's just one of the slices to the Large Hadron Collider.
Yeah, with my research, you've helped me a lot too. I'm still reading your book, and I'm still letting things sink in. It takes me a while to really understand what you do, the scientific part. It's very complicated for me. I can't just pick it up and read it. I have to search a lot of words and all the definitions and put it together and let it sink in and continue to do that. It takes a while. So, but I do appreciate your work very much, because looking at the ancient history with the Egyptians and how it connects, it actually parallels with Cern and their goal. And the reason is because of what happened in history. Saturn was the ruler of the Golden Age. There happened to have been a flood. After the flood, Zeus, which was Amon, ruled Egypt, and you can see his cube and his rod in the back of his head. And they had some kind of ground wiring system that was connected to the stars, through the Milky Way, which was the ladder for them, and then the star system and the leg of the bull, which is the Shin letter. The Jews wear it on their heads, and it also represents the USB cable. I thought that was really interesting. It's like a Shin fire. And so the leg of the bull is the 7 Pleiades, and it also, to me, it represents something that happened after the cataclysmic event that is connected to Saturn. So we know that CERN machine is somehow connected to Saturn, and basically the Egyptians had a little bit different way of connecting the Antichrist, Osiris, and the underworld to the world here through some kind of electronic system. And that's what they're doing now, but in a different kind of way. And that's kind of what we're trying to put together with my research and your research, and try to understand what they're actually trying to do with this DNA. I mean, how did they do it then? Would they had some type of DNA crossing when they went on the solar boats, which they identify that with the ring of Saturn. You see Mercury wearing it on top of his head, and his symbol is actually a female. And we know Hermes represents Mercury, and he's also male and female. He's not just a male, he's both. But long story short, if you know the story of Osiris, and he was killed by his brother Set, and he was resurrected, and they couldn't find his phallus. I guess a crab ate it, but that's the story if you look in the Book of the Dead. And Thoth made a golden phallus in order to raise Osiris from the dead. And so whenever that happened, and after the flood and the resurrection in this electric system is kind of like CERN, they actually Thoth, he became Horus. So he was actually Isis, and Thoth became they became Horus. It's very confusing, but Horus is the resurrected Osiris. If you read Manly P. Hall and a lot of Freemason and occult writers, Aleister Crowley and different people, they say that Horus is the resurrected Antichrist. Mm-hmm. And so we don't know how he's going to be presented, because I guess the Antichrist wants to appear as Jesus Christ. He wants people to believe that he is God. And Hermes actually is identified with Quetzalcoatl and Buddha, and you can connect him to many faces and many different deities because he actually represents the Ka, which is a spirit. And I think you mentioned to me that the Pope was mentioning about a spirit particle that he wanted found. What did he actually say about that?
Yeah, basically it was very cryptic. He just said that now that they have found the God particle, meaning the Higgs boson, they need to find the spiritual particle. And my take on that is they have already found the spiritual particle. And that follows a pattern we've discussed before about hidden information and revelation of that information at certain times. But in my research, we go to quantum physics. We go to the components that make up atoms, which essentially are quarks, gluons, muons, boson, which is a category of particles. And essentially what I like to focus on, because I want people to be able to have something they can wrap their head around, something that's tangible, that makes sense. And that is a combination of gluons and quarks, and those are hard to get your head around. So if you put quarks and gluons together, you come up with what is known as a strangelet, and we've talked about this a little bit before. The unique thing about a strangelet is that it attracts other particles to it, much like a black hole in that mechanism of attraction. It's not gravitational. It is an atomic, what they call a weak interaction, the interaction between particles. Strangelets attract other particles, they attract atoms, and then they attract molecules, and so forth and so on. To cut to the chase, the strangelet, in my estimation, is the spiritual particle that the Vatican, the Pope, was speaking of. The reason for calling it the spiritual, even though it's larger than a quark and a gluon that you're bringing together to create a strangelet particle, is the fact that it does attract. It's this attraction that we can go on and discuss a little bit more about, that is the mechanism in which they will create the double helix of DNA. And that has, in the micro world, its application. But as we have always been talking about, so is above, so is below. There's a macro world of application to the double helix, and this goes to Saturn, and it goes to Saturn and the Earth. And we'll backfill some of that information. I just don't want to overload people. But spirit particle, strangelet, attraction, building, DNA, the new beast, be it Horus, is really that slice of Cern that we're talking about today.
Yeah. So is it that when they find this, is it like there's going to, with these particles, there becomes a black hole? Is
Not
that
necessarily. People have heard of black holes, and it's in popular culture, so it's easy for people to visualize a black hole with its gravity, its density, attracting light into it as they portrayed in the movies. The strangelet operates much the same way. It doesn't have the gravity due to density that a black hole has, but it has the same type of mechanism in the sense of attracting things to it that a black hole does. Strangelets do not create black holes. Many years going back, 4, 5, 6 years, people were all up in arms about the Hadron Collider creating black holes, and it was going to be the end of humanity. There's been some recent articles published about comments that what's his name? I'm sorry, I'm thinking of the physicist, Stephen Hawking, talking about if they turn CERN on again this year, that it's going to potentially destroy the universe. He's being taken out of context. I want to sort of defend his comment a little bit. The reason that he's made that comment was that if there was infinite energy available, then the world would be swallowed up, attracted to a black hole that would be created by the Large Hadron Collider. Should it have access to infinite energy? It does not. That's the portion of the articles that they fail to present. They've taken his comments out of context. So let's go back. If you have infinite energy, you can create a black hole and you can destroy the universe. There is no infinite energy that is being accessed. Therefore, there's no destruction of the universe. And poor Stephen Hawking, he just gets beat up because he makes profound statements that people need to think about, but they're not looking at the whole statement. And so I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but it's important for people to understand, no black holes are going to be created. The planet is not going to be converted to a neutron star, which is the end result of the production of strangelets. Strangelets in the near term, the immediate future, its application is for this process of constructing the double helix and then the triple helix of DNA.
Okay, that makes a lot of more sense. You know, I think that you mentioned that before, actually, about the strangelets understanding between the two. So, you know, I can identify when the Vatican, on my level, but on the Vatican, when he says that, he's talking about the Ka. And in my opinion, you know, even on a vase, an old vase that was called the Ka vessel, it had the USB symbol on it from the 3000 something BC. It was very old, and it was around the time of Menes Namar. And so it connects with the resurrection of Osiris and the dead during that time too. And so I just find that real interesting, the connection with those symbols and with the Hebrew alphabet and their meanings, because they mean very deep things. That's why they wear them on their head and on their arm, and they wrap that leather strap around it. And they actually have one that has 4 prongs on it instead of 3. There's a shin, and there's the Zayin letter, which 8 = 7, and they want that added on, and they said that's for the new world to come. And so actually I'm wondering, is that what they're talking about? Does that match up with a particle that the Vatican is talking about, and that they're looking for to be able to make that connection? Because to me, I connect all of this with the supercomputer, with the energy and everything that they're trying to do with this new supercomputer system and the mark of the beast. Because when we talked about earlier too that the caducees represents DNA, and even through their Unicodes, through Homo sapien proteins and certain DNA with Moses's, he's Alcepius, and Thoth, which his caducees was Apollo, and Apollo was his brother, and so he carried Apollo's caducees, and Thoth was represents one of the snakes on it. He protects the gate, because it's also a gate. It's the same thing that was in the Garden of Eden. It was the tree of consciousness, and that's what they want. They want your mind, and they want your consciousness to connect to the supercomputer, and for you to just obey and walk in the footsteps that they want you to, because they want this soul energy. Something that we don't really understand unless we look into it, unless God has us on that path to be able to look into these things to find out, is there a conspiracy here with this new world order, and with them wanting to take our brains, which actually is our soul and soul energy. And the Antichrist wants to be God, and he wants to rule the world as God. And the Bible says that these things are going to happen, that the Antichrist is going to come out of the abyss, and the angel is going to be given the key to the bottomless pit, and Wormwood is an angel that's going to be come down. We don't know exactly when that time is, but we do have a lot of things going on that we're watching right now. So,
Yeah.
you know, and I do have a lot of.
Sure.
Go ahead, Anthony.
I think Tim wanted to jump in.
I just had a question. I was just trying to synthesize this down to the original purpose of CERN and the internet was to prepare the people, or to get people linked in, to get them linked in together, to get them focused together. But the DNA aspect of CERN is to basically work on the mark of the beast technology, I guess, at the DNA level. And so as we're transitioning now from Internet 1, it's just the only way I know it's something
Sure.
4 and then something 5. I keep forgetting the acronyms here. So I say Internet 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Means that we're kicking off into the Mark of the Beast program, that they've accomplished their steps to reverse engineering DNA down to the strangelets that you call the spirit particle that the Vatican is linking into. Now, you made statements that the strangelet is the most explosive substance known to mankind. Is that true?
Yes.
And the fascination of the Illuminati or the Luciferians, I noticed just from pop culture, they love the fireworks, is one of their favorite examples of exploding. They like to bring the feminine together with the masculine, and right at the center where they touch, you get explosion. And so to them, creating is the explosion. And for strangelets to be the most explosive things, to me, makes sense that they would be fascinated with that. But to call it spirit that's interesting. I'm not really, of course it fits with their alchemy, their alchemical kind of explosive thing. And it's interesting that to me that here you got this Babylonian mystery school religion run by the Pope, who's promoting this strangelet explosion and then the Mark of the Beast DNA technology. So the breakthrough news is that CERN was very much involved with DNA manipulation for Mark of the Beast technology. Is that what we're...
Yes. Referring back to my first book, Covert Catastrophe, remember we talked about synchrotrons and the use of those synchrotron particle accelerators was to generate large amounts of X-ray energy. Think of X-rays as a flashlight. At Berkeley, the synchrotron is housed in a building called the Advanced Light Source Building, ALS. Now, the reason for this X-ray energy is so that they can literally illuminate, and this is where the greater than 100,000 suns that Chris, you referred to, comes from, is that they have the most powerful light ever generated by man that we know of. So you have this flashlight. What's it for? Well, it's to look at the subatomic structure, specifically looking at the structure of proteins. Proteins are the building blocks, as are amino acids, for DNA. So you go back to the big picture. Why create a machine like the Large Hadron Collider or smaller machines like the synchrotron at Berkeley in the ALS building? And there are many, many, many synchrotrons around the world. Why are they so willing to expend all of that time and energy to build these machines simply to look at protein, to look at DNA? Why bother? Certainly there are other applications beyond that, but the big push, the big reason is to look at protein so that they understand what the building blocks are of our DNA. And going even deeper is to look at the code, the pattern of our DNA. This goes back to the Human Genome Project, mapping of the human DNA. They want to unlock the codes of our DNA, not just so that they can manipulate, so they can take genes and splice them and create all kinds of interesting things from them, but going all the way to the nub of the issue is if you have broken the codes then you can reuse those and repurpose those codes. You can then begin to build from scratch. So the Pope says, great, we found the God particle, now we want to find the spirit particle. In order to start at the beginning, so as below as above, the Big Bang theory, to start at the beginning of the universe, you have an explosion. So the theory is. If you start at the beginning of DNA, to build DNA, you have the codes, which are the patterns, but you have to have something at the beginning to spark the growth of the DNA into the helical pattern. So when I say that strangelets are the most powerful explosive in the known universe, doesn't necessarily mean that just because you create them, they're going to create something that's massively exploding. You have to go to the quantum level and say, here is energy that is expanding rapidly in the form of an explosion at the quantum level. It's a very, very minute amount of energy when you're talking about a very small amount of strangelets. Let's just say it's a couple of pieces of strangelet material at the quantum level that provide the spark to life. And I'll stop there.
Okay. I know we've thrown out a couple terms here. The brain initiative that Obama talked about, where, of course, Chris has referenced the Views video of him talking about the reptilian brain, and, of course, they were talking about racial issues with that. But he was heading up the brain initiative. There was also another aspect that was called the Human Chromatome Project, HCP, I guess. And these are all kind of connected with this Cern and this connection to these extended labs around the globe that the internet was set up to hook up to do this genetic research. It's interesting. So much information is coming from these CERN projects that they have, that it's shot to these extending laboratories to break down the data that they're tasked to analyze. And then they shoot it back to CERN once it's synthesized, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So they're at a point, though, going from Internet 1 to 2, then basically, that they're done with what they had tasked to do. In the past 15 years that you've been studying CERN, they're done now. They're done with that previous experimentation. And so now they're moving into the next phase, which is this takeover, I guess, of what would you call what we're entering into?
We're going into the building phase. We can set aside the portal discussion. That's a whole other part of it that we've covered before. But in terms of creating the image of the beast spoken of in Scripture, that's where we're at. We're at the starting point where they're going to turn the key this year. They're going to generate the strangelets that they need in sufficient quantities to create this process of building the DNA.
Okay. So, all right, we're going into the building phase of the beast. Now, I've seen through the movies that we've talked about, Transcendence, the holograms, using the holograms and the supercomputers, these adiabatic computers or quantum computers, and these holograms. The image and holograms, I mean, this is a big part of your second book, Diamonds, where we have a lot of hologram stuff that's infused in that book. And your companion novel, the little 43-page companion, gives the science behind what the storyline is in the book itself. So the image that's going to be worship, we talked about idol worship, the 10 commandments, the first couple commandments. Thou shalt have no other God before you, and thou shalt not worship graven images, which is just, accidentally removed from the 10 Commandments of the Catholic Church, but they forgot that one somewhere. And they split the 10 Commandments into 2 covets instead. thou shalt not covet stuff or wives, things like that, instead of thou shalt not worship graven images. So we're back to idol worship here. We're back to the image of the beast, directed worship to the Antichrist through this image. And there's just something on the supernatural level of thou shalt not have any other gods before me. And the idol worship, or this hologram worship, or this beast worship that we're entering into. Can you elaborate on any of that stuff?
Certainly. The bigger struggle for me is to condense it all down. There's so much information that I can cover. But briefly, what you're looking at here is let me take it to the macro world to kind of reinforce what I'm saying is happening at the micro world. There's a pattern of expansion that occurs throughout the universe, and the expansion actually takes on the shape of a helix, a double helix, if you will, or a helical pattern. The particles that we see expanding in the universe from the time of the Big Bang are expanded out to a point where we can't really put our finger on or measure the actual shape of the universe. But its expansion takes on the shape of a helix, just like our DNA. And it appears to me that the ancients knew this. And so they want to create their version of a new universe, of a new heaven on earth, and populate it with new beings of their own design. So they are doing nothing more than just replicating the pattern that exists in the universe down at the small level, the smaller level here on the planet. That's kind of a quick summary.
Okay. Chris, what do you want to do with your slides? Do you want to introduce them at this point?
And I'll show some slides really quick. There's just, a few, but what I understand with Nimrod building the Tower of Babel, all of these things, Satan was a cherubim in the garden on the first level, and he was kicked out. Adam and Eve was kicked out of paradise. And he was kicked all the way down to the 8th level, where the archangels are, and ruling over the universe and the earth. And they want to get back to the Garden of Eden. That's what they want to build, these building blocks. They want paradise, and they want to get back to the golden age and back to this paradise. But they also they want to sin while they're there too. And you can't have both. They want immortality, and they want the Garden of Eden. They want it all, and they want to control it and to be God, and they want people to worship them, just like Adam and Eve. Satan wanted them to bow down to him, and they did, and they took on certain DNA, and they were put down in this 10th level, the sphere of Earth. And that's what this is all about too. I think that Tim touched on the holographic images and the mind and those things. But Satan wants us to put on his mind. He wants us to be tricked. He's the trickster. He wants us to believe what he wants us to believe, and he has had this plan for so long. Since ancient history, he's always wanted to be released from the pit so he could reign and rule the earth. And he's going to have a little time, and God is going to use that, towards the people that don't accept Christ, and people that, I believe in the Lord, and I know that he has a plan, no matter what. He wants us to put all of our trust in him. But those are just my thoughts on this whole thing, with the supercomputer and the connections with the USB and the symbolism of the Shin. The Aleph is also the Shin. These letters in ancient history if you study them. I'll show a picture of them too. Why don't I get that if anybody wants to comment while I'm doing that?
Okay.
Yeah, let me jump back to the hologram because I didn't really finish your question there, Tim.
Okay.
The holograms, most people will have experienced them as projections of light onto buildings or screens or out in the center of a room or on a stage. The hologram that I'm speaking of and that I wrote about in my book are solid. These are three-dimensional. These are, in the book, I take liberty and say that they're constructed of nanodiamonds that are grown from nanoseeds of carbon, C60 carbon, and therefore the holograms in the book are made of diamond. Part of that is because diamonds in the real world can take on digital information using lasers. You can take a laser that is pulsed with digital information that is then directed at a crystal of diamond, and that digital information will be embedded or imparted into the diamond crystal, and that data will remain stable for the life of the diamond. So essentially that data becomes immortal.
Wow.
So I have used diamonds as a construct to build holographic structures in the book, but also in the book there is a point at which a actual conversion takes place of the main character, the protagonist, Jim. Slowly over a period of time during the storyline, he is evolving into a person constructed entirely of diamond. So it sort of sounds like the Iron Man story, but
yes.
The point of all of this is the holographic image of the beast that will be created at Cern doesn't necessarily have to be comprised of diamonds per se, although it will be of carbon because that is what we are primarily made of. C60 carbon in the form of fullerenes or buckyballs will be used in constructing the false DNA. You will, in the end of what I'm bringing to you here, is you have a solid person that is a holographic person, not because there's a light of laser being projected to create this image, but this is so that it's something that people can understand, again, wrap their heads around. When I call it holographic, I'm calling it holographic for the purpose that it is an artificial representation of a person created by using a laser to initially create the DNA, and then the DNA takes over and begins to grow into this solid person. But it doesn't require a laser or a computer to continue generating this image of the beast. It'll be a self-sustaining standalone. Go ahead.
Do you think the term that we often hear used when we're talking about Nimrod became the Geborim? He became. He was human, but he became. Is this you're kind of talking similar here?
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Wow, that's just fascinating. That's unreal. Another just side conspiracy here that attaches to this one that, of course, I've covered in many radio shows was the Shroud of Turin and the obsession with the Catholic Church with it, and Hitler, the Nazis with the power relics and stuff like that. Blood samples are speculated. Dr. Joy's research, she speculates Antichrist, similar blood of Turin, Shroud of Turin, something like that. But do you think, I mean, yeah, there's a whole group that doesn't, there's a whole group that just says it's not real in the first place. But if it was, and the obsession with the Catholic Church with it, and this C60 technology and holograms, we potentially could be looking at the dwelling in the Holy of Holies in the sense of dwelling in the reincarnate, well, what do you want to say? How would you just say it? The holographic reconstruction of Jesus' blood?
The incarnation.
Incarnation. There we go. I mean, this is just tying one of these loose ends of a lot of people I've been talking about for the last 10 years at least. With it's a little side onto this, but I'm looking at the.
No, it's relevant. It's relevant. The public. I love how the Illuminati, whoever you want to talk about, operate. It's so humorous. They will put out a message for public consumption. And that message with the Shroud of Turin was, this was the image of Christ. This is the picture of Christ. This is what he looked like. That's the cover story. You go beneath that, lift the shroud, if you will, and look beneath it. It's the DNA that they were focusing on. They wanted to extract DNA, patterns of DNA from the fabric, because they felt that that was, again, part of this process of being able to incarnate the image of the beast.
Do you think that that's possibly what's going on with one of the samples that they're using at Cern or something like that for this holographic thing? Or do you think that's just a side rabbit hole story that...
I think it's part of sort of reinforcing. It's, in other words, we don't know exactly what the DNA needs to look like, so we'll take samples from multiple areas. We talked about the RH factor in the last show. We were talking about rhesus monkeys. We're talking about blood typing, people being examined to determine what blood groups they're in and if they have the RH factor or not. But this is where I toss it to Chris, because they were going to Iraq, Iran, Syria, Egypt, and collecting artifacts, collecting DNA. And I would like Chris to pick up from that. But, you know, we're talking about, in the popular culture, Tim, movies like, you know, the Ark of the Covenant, you know, Indiana Jones and all that stuff, and the Nazis running around looking for artifacts. It's a gathering like the Shroud of Turin, gathering from all around the world to come up with a composite picture of what this new DNA, the coding of that DNA needs to look like, while they're looking at it at the quantum level using the synchrotron machines and X-rays. But the interesting thing that I think Chris can bring into it is the gathering of DNA from multiple sources in ancient areas of the world.
Well, the 13th pillar is, I guess, it represents the spinal column. And I think that when Satan was in the garden and Cain was produced, they had their DNA. They had what they needed then. And I think that he is Osiris, and I've done articles on that, and I've plugged in a lot of information on that as him as the Scorpion King. But I think that once Osiris was killed, this has a lot to do with it. And, you know, you can mark my word for it, because you can look around the Vatican and all over the world, and you can see Osiris's obelisk, which represents his phallus, all over the world.
Yep.
I mean,
including Berkeley.
Yeah, including Berkeley. It's in front of a lot of churches and, you know, the Vatican and all that stuff. And I guess this is the disgusting thing that's mentioned in the Bible, but this is their God. This is who they want to resurrect. He was resurrected into the underworld, and so this is who they want. And so there is certain DNA from like the very beginning. I guess they were kicked out of the garden. Maybe God didn't allow anything else like that to happen again. I think that maybe Satan was able to have full possession of Cain, and that might be part of it. And then Set killed Osiris, and he represents Sobek. And there's a story with the Dendara map and the star Sirius, and all of those things connect together with this system through the Milky Way. That's what I was talking about before.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is, I mean, I know they said they found Osiris's tomb. We don't know if they did just find it or if this is something that they've always had and always been working on. I don't know. But I can show some pictures of the Dendara map and the caducees and some of these things. And I can also show some pictures of Cern and the Sanskrit plates and everything that they have. Let me get that and I'll pull that up, and once I do, you can click on my box once you see the pictures. So I'll go ahead and get started on showing those, so that way people can kind of get an idea in their mind.
Okay, so we'll just highlight your box so that everybody can see the same thing as we're talking.
There we are. Well, my computer cooperates with me. This is the, I had it open on this, but this is the Sanskrit plates that are in Cern.
Mm-hmm.
Cern is like a zodiac. It's a musical type instrument, because even the Egyptians used harmonics to be able to open that portal. But so Cern, you know, we know that's a big key in DNA, and here's their 666 logo, and they have their Shiva dancer in the front. I mean, people need to ask those questions, you know, why do they have those things?
You also have the helical DNA on the far right with the human body there. And notice how it's going up into space, and that's one of our other discussions to have at some point, which is the whole Saturn connection to CERN and the helical Jacob's ladder discussion at some point, but not today.
Here's what I was talking about with the electricity and Hathor, Isis. Here's Draco, and this is Set. At some point, he becomes on her back, but Set is her counterpart, and all of these represents Osiris, the alligator, the Sphinx, Horus, and here's Osiris and the leg of the bull. And the Pleiades here is here at some point, and we see the Pleiades here, which is the leg of the bull. That represents Set, and here's the Kabbalah. This is the Shin letter here, which represents the leg of the bull, and this is the Aleph, and this is the Mem. This represents Venus. The Mem letter represents water, and so these are letters that represent the Antichrist. And here they are here, Horus, Set, and here's the Shin fire, and this is the Aleph bull, air and water. And this is the Shin symbol with the extra Vav on it. It refers to the angel Samiel in the Zohar. And this is the letter called Zayin. And it's actually Z to us, but Zayin to the Jews. And it actually, over time in history, when you read the story about this letter, it also represents a phallus. So when they would have classes on it, sometimes they would giggle about it when they were teaching on it later on in history. But anyway, that's kind of what I wanted to show everybody on that. This is the new biometric passport symbol that just came out. It represents, it looks like Saturn, kind of. Here's an interstellar black hole. But I just found it interesting that that was their biometric symbol for their passport.
Yeah, for the pop culture, I did an article one time on the Black Hole Sun song, and just showed them, you know, just this whole thing about the black sun worship and the Nazis and all that stuff, and this whole cult, this Saturn cult, basically, if you want to just simplify it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, people can look through history and see that that Saturn was a cult that was worshipped. And, here's the black cube, which represents Saturn. These black cubes are all over the world. Most people, that they know that. That's kind of the easy thing that people can figure out. But, I was just going to say that here's the caduceus here. Here's the seal of Thoth, which is Hermes. And so the two snakes, they represent one. They represent Nema and Samuel, which is one spirit, demon spirit. And the center pole represents Cain. And Ningisida, I guess that's how you say it, in Samaria represents Thoth. And his mother actually is Maia, which is the head Pleiadian of the Pleiades. And I find that interesting because her name is also Maya in the Indian language, and she represents the Mayan civilization. And Thoth is also Quetzalcoatl, so he represents the rainbow serpent too.
That's some good work.
Yeah, and this is, see this symbol? This is the Aleph. This is one of the oldest symbols, and you can see Cain. He carries that on his Namar vessel, and he has this. This is like the plow, and we know he was a tiller of the ground. Noah was also a tiller of the ground. He planted wine vineyards and stuff, but a lot of people know this symbol here. This is also the symbol of Neth, and she's the goddess of war. And this represents the resurrection as a male and a female. This is a picture from the Brooklyn Museum. There was a French author that took these hieroglyphics and put them in color. So you can look at the Brooklyn Museum, and I can actually put the link at the bottom. You can look yourself. But she represents the female aspect of Vulcan, and Vulcan represents Tubal Cain, which is Ptah. So there's another link to the bloodline of Cain with the resurrection of Osiris right there. So she represents Horus as a resurrection of Thoth and Isis together to become Horus. So, and this is part of their electric thing here, because if you look at this picture, here is Ptah on his back. I don't have a picture of his back up yet, but you can look up a picture of his back, and he's connected to Isis, and this is Isis. Mari is Isis. She's also the mother of Ningishur-Zeta, which is Thoth in Sumerian language. So you would have to read all the languages to know who they're talking about. But this is her, and her hat is a phallus hat, and on the back of her she has a box and a rod. And so this is like a connection to Saturn through the Pleiades back then in the ancient days.
It's kind of like an antenna setup, isn't it? Kind of like being linked.
Yeah. And you see this back here on his back. If you look at priests today in the Vatican, they wear this too, and it represents third-strand DNA. And they have this in their back. Yeah, it's like a battery, and they have it in their back. Here's Amon. This is Zeus, Jupiter. And so after Saturn was castrated, he became resurrected as Amon. And this is Amon, and this is him plugged into his cube, which is an energy source. So they had some type of grounded energy source that went on the ley lines throughout the world. Some type of connection. I know Anthony explained that before with the as above, so below, and the electrons. But the word for this leg of the bull is kopesh in Egypt. It means sickle, And we see Saturn carrying a sickle in his hand, and here's the leg of it means the leg of the bull also. It's the Hebrew letter Shin, which the Jews wear on their head, and it represents the Pleiades, which is Ursa Major. And in Hindu, it means shining ones. So they actually call them the seven thrones. And here.
Okay, I was just remembering news today that I heard that they're going to be doing head transplants on new bodies, and you had the sickle there, and you had the little box was sitting there. I don't know what plexus it would be, but that seems to be sitting on the C7 T1 type of junction. And I know Anthony's an EMT from the his medical background, and I look at that sometimes and I go, why is it at that position on the body? Is it to input information into some kind of that's me again.
It's the termination point of the brainstem.
Ah, there you go. That's the whole thing with the beheading and the reattaching to.
Right.
What do you think when you start hearing them talking about transplanting heads on new bodies?
Oh my gosh.
Well, that's the story today. That is the story today.
It's a stepping stone. Again, it's an intermediary. It's just to see if they can do it, basically, is what I'm saying here. The end goal here is to have the machine merged with the mind. It won't necessarily be a head placed onto another human body. It's much simpler to simply place a human head with its brainstem intact onto a machine. And these images that, Chris, you're putting up are, in my estimation, are just depicting exactly that process, that it's easier to take a head and put it onto a mechanical body. Because the body itself is a machine. When I used to teach paramedic classes, I used to reinforce to people that the brain is just carried by a mechanical machine. And if you look at the mechanics of the body, not just the skeletal and muscular, but the organs and the bloodstream and the heart and everything else, these are all just mechanical processes combined with chemical processes. So yeah, it'd be easy to do that, but I don't think it's really even necessary, because you have the ability to grow from DNA whatever being, whatever creature you want, and that's already being done. We've seen that already with not just cloning, but the actual growing from biological, from stem cells and T cells, being able to grow organs and to grow an entire body. And that includes the brain.
Wow, that's interesting. It makes me think about Islam, the radical ones that cut off people's heads, I mean, and then they, in Obamacare, they had the Section E978 with the guillotines, and I wonder, are they, is there a reason that they want to cut our heads off, or what?
I don't think they're recycling.
No, okay. They don't want your head. So, going back to the DNA and CERN, is there anything that we missed that we need to address to?
Well, you brought up frequencies. And Chris, you brought up the musical instrument, CERN being a musical instrument, and looking at the Sanskrit plates. And I think most people understand the concept of frequencies, that matter is really a lower form or a lower frequency. And when you talk about the universe or you talk about DNA, you're talking about physical matter, which is nothing more than a representation of energy in the form of frequencies. We measure energy by assigning frequencies to them, amplitude and the number of those waves, long waves and short waves.
Tim.
Go ahead.
I hate to cut us short, but I have to go. It's already 3:30.
Okay.
Already 3:40. I'm running late, actually.
All right.
But I want to pick this up as soon as we can. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll respond to any of your comments, or Tim will. And sorry to cut us off short here, but we'll definitely get together and be posting. I'll post a link to when we're going to get together soon next time on this subject.
Sure.
Okay, well, thank you, Chris.
All right, thank you,
Thanks for
guys.
having us today.
All right, have a good day.
Okay, bye-bye.